Considering your father-in-law was a director at a major company, I'm curious about how much inheritance he might have left behind, John inquired, trying to mask his curiosity. I sighed internally but maintained a cheerful smile. I heard it's $54,000, I replied. John looked shocked. My name is Catherine. John and I have been married for 20 years and our son left for college this year. Life with just the two of us is quiet but manageable. On weekends, John joins his colleagues for football and practices all day. I work part-time and spend my days off gardening or attending yoga with my friends. Even though we do different things, I think we're a typical couple for our age. However, something terrible disrupted our peaceful life as a couple. It started with a message I received from a friend who attends yoga with me. Attached to the message was a photo. I'm at the station now, but isn't this your husband, Catherine? I hesitated, but when I opened the photo, even from a distance, I could clearly tell it was John. He was walking hand in hand with another woman. My heart pounded. Could John be cheating? He said he was going for football practice in preparation for tomorrow's match, but was that a lie? I think it's my husband, I replied. My friend responded immediately, What will you do? Do you want to come over? After a moment of hesitation, I replied, No, I'm good. I'll talk to my husband. I closed the phone and sat down on the sofa. I had no motivation to do anything, and the only thought in my head was, what should I do? I could ask John, but I was afraid. What if he really was cheating? Thinking of divorce, especially when I only have a part-time job to support myself, made me think that I couldn't possibly go through all that. If I pretended not to know, I could continue living a peaceful life like before, but the idea of pretending and the ambiguity bothered me deeply. I don't know how long I sat like that, but I was jolted back to reality by the sound of the front door. It was already 7 in the evening. What's wrong? Why haven't you turned on the lights? John asked, surprised, as he turned on the living room lights. Oh, sorry, I fell asleep, I said. John laughed in disbelief and began washing his uniform in the washing machine. Seeing that, I realized he must have been exercising and wondered if the earlier photo might have been a mistake. If you're tired, do you want to eat out tonight? John suggested. I nodded eagerly, hoping that spending time together would help ease my uneasy feelings. Did you stop by anywhere else today besides football? I asked. Not really. Why? He responded. Just wondering. You mentioned wanting new shoes recently, so I thought you might have gone shopping for them. Oh, I haven't bought them yet, he said. With that, our conversation ended. The John in front of me seemed just like how he has always been. They say everyone has at least 3 doppelgangers in the world. Perhaps the man in the photo was one of them. However, once I began to suspect him, it was difficult for me to stop. I often found myself dumping him during his late-night overtimes or sudden overnight business trips. Bad things do happen. One day, on my way home from my part-time job, I stopped by the supermarket to buy ingredients for dinner. My phone rang, and I took it out of my bag, stepping into a less crowded aisle. The name displayed on the screen made me frown. It was my brother's name. Though I occasionally communicated with my sister-in-law during events like our children's school enrollments or graduations, I hadn't spoken to my brother in years. These sudden phone calls from relatives are often not good news. Hello, I answered hesitantly. I answered the call. What I heard from my brother was distressing. Our father's health was worsening. He had suddenly collapsed at work and had been rushed to the hospital. After some detailed exams, the doctors informed him that our father didn't have much time left. My mother had passed away from an illness a few years ago, and although my brother and his wife had offered to live with our father afterward, he had refused and continued to live alone, seemingly in good health. The last time I spoke to him, he sounded fine, so this news was truly surprising. After telling my brother I would visit soon, I hung up the phone and took a deep breath to calm my heart. When I told John, who came home from work that night, he looked really sad. I see, your father. Don't worry about things here. You should go see him, John said. Encouraged by his words, I went to see my father the next day. Dad, what happened? Are you okay? I asked. Oh, Catherine, I suddenly felt dizzy and couldn't get up. It must be old age, I guess. Sorry for making you worry, he said. His usually loud and boisterous voice sounded weak, causing pain in my heart. Though he looked pale, he didn't seem critically ill. Catherine, did something happen? Did you and John have a fight? He asked suddenly. Taken aback by his question, I didn't know how to respond. My father gave a wry smile. You're just like your mother, holding things in. Live as your heart desires. Not knowing what the future holds, for a parent, seeing their child's smiling face is the greatest happiness. Realizing the truth in his words, I was deeply moved. Although I wanted to talk to my father a little longer, he told me he was tired, so I decided to leave for the day. The visit lasted only about 15 minutes, but just thinking that he could be so exhausted from such a short time made tears roll down my cheeks. As I sat on the sofa near my father's room, waiting for my tears to stop, a man in a white coat sat next to me. "Are you here to visit your father? I'm the doctor in charge." "Oh, I'm so sorry. How embarrassing," I said, quickly taking out a handkerchief to wipe away my tears. Taking a closer look at the doctor, he seemed to be around my age with a kind face that made me feel at ease. "It's all right. It must have been a shock for you. Do you have any questions?" he asked. With his encouragement, I started to ask various questions about my father's condition and what to expect in the future. Despite repeating the same questions multiple times, he never looked annoyed and explained everything in detail until a nurse came, saying, "Sir, we need you." Thanks to him, even though I still felt sad, my heart was somewhat at ease. After returning home and recalling my conversation with my father, I decided to call the friend who had sent me the photo. I wanted to discuss the suspicions I had about my husband's affair. "I've been worried I might have done something unnecessary by telling you that. I'm sorry for causing you pain," my friend said. "No, I'm glad you told me. I've finally come to terms with John's suspected affair, but I have no idea what to do," I confessed. Chuckling, my friend shared some advice. "Actually, my husband is a lawyer. He said there are many clients consulting him about divorces due to affairs. I'll ask him for advice." Hearing this, I felt comforted knowing I wasn't the only one struggling. My friend immediately took action, telling me it was best to gather evidence of the affair and that I could use a private detective agency to do so. She even recommended a few agencies and offered to go with me if I felt anxious, making me realize how invaluable true friends are. From then on, between visiting my father and working part-time, my days were quite busy. At the same time, my husband started saying he was getting busier with work. Overtime and business trips noticeably increased, and his suspicious behavior had me eagerly awaiting the investigation results. 2 weeks later, I finally received the awaited results at the detective agency. The investigator hesitated before speaking. "It's true that he's having an affair." Surprisingly, I accepted the reality without panicking or feeling devastated. In fact, knowing the truth brought a sense of relief, dispelling my previous uneasiness. They showed me numerous photos and explained his activities over the past 2 weeks. There were also audio recordings, and the situation was worse than I had imagined. To begin with, his football games were only once a week, always in the morning for just 2 hours. The other employees always headed home right after the game, as they had families waiting. However, John spent all his remaining time with his mistress. At times, she would even wait for him at a diner near the football court. He deliberately washed his jersey, claiming he used it during the game, to ensure his lie wasn't caught. All his claims of overtime and business trips were fabricated just to spend time with her. The most shocking audio recording revealed him discussing with his mistress about getting a divorce once he inherited his money, predicting my father's passing in a month or so. They had already discussed pre-booking an apartment near the train station. His recent busyness was related to preparing for their new life together, making reservations for furniture and appliances, and even planning a premarital trip next month. All this left me feeling dizzy. The fact that my husband was eagerly waiting for my father to pass away destroyed any remaining love or affection I had had for him. My only feeling was the increasing desire to divorce him. I paid a significant amount to the detective agency, took all the data, and decided to leave it with my friend for safekeeping. When I mentioned hiring a lawyer, they immediately agreed and offered to introduce me to someone they knew. However, I had used all my money on the detective agency and was hesitant to touch our shared finances. After some contemplation, I decided to swallow my pride and consult my brother about it. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" he exclaimed, annoyed. Thankfully, he generously offered to cover the expected legal fees. I had a meeting with a lawyer and discussed my desire to work full-time or as a regular employee at my part-time job. I was told they could hire me as a contract employee, which gave me hope regarding my financial situation. With everything now in place, I started thinking about how to broach the subject of divorce. One midnight, I received a call from my brother. He was calling to tell me that our father had passed away. I woke up John, and we rushed to the hospital. John briefly visited my father, greeted my brother and his wife, and said some comforting words to me. He then returned home by himself. Everything after that happened so quickly that I can hardly remember. There was the wake, the funeral, meeting our relatives, and basically, I had no time to grieve. Even after the funeral, there was the matter of sorting out the house, discussing inheritance, and handling the legal aspects of my father's estate. My brother, his wife, and I were all exhausted. John, however, kept saying he was busy with work and didn't help at all. Despite my father having just passed away, John went out to play football on the weekend. My brother and his wife were visibly frustrated, but they knew about my intention to divorce him and refrained from saying anything. With so much going on, I had to postpone the divorce. It wasn't until about 6 months later that things took a major turn. Finally, all procedures related to my father were completed, and the inheritance amount was confirmed. "By the way, has your father's inheritance come through yet?" John asked. "It's scheduled to be transferred tomorrow." "Why do you ask?" I replied. "Well, your father was a director of a major company. I was just curious about how much inheritance he'd leave behind." John tried to sound casual. I sighed internally but hid my true feelings and just smiled brightly. "I heard it's about $54,000. "That much?" he exclaimed. "Yes, Dad must have worked hard to save that much. I just got a call today from the lawyer saying everything's ready. It'll be transferred tomorrow, so maybe we can go out and eat something delicious to celebrate," I said, emphasizing the fact that it would be transferred the next day. John seemed lost in thought. The next day after John had gone to work, I conspicuously placed the bank book on the desk. When I returned from work, as expected, the bank book was gone, and instead, a signed divorce paper was there. I hadn't anticipated things to go this smoothly, so while thinking he took the bait, I headed to my lawyer handling my divorce and explained the current situation. I decided not to return home, instead heading straight to my family home where my father had passed away. Most of my belongings were already there, and the things where I lived with John were shared, and how to handle them would be decided later. Probably John and his mistress would end up living there. Having already submitted the divorce papers, there was no reason to contact my estranged husband. The only thing left was a potential claim for damages for his affair from my lawyer. However, since they couldn't contact him, nothing could be done at the moment. But 3 days after I returned to my family home, I received a call from John. "Catherine, what's going on?" "There's no money in the bank account." "Where's the inheritance and where are you?" John demanded. "Inheritance is mine. Why would you use it?" I decided to play dumb for the time being. By asking about my whereabouts, it seemed John had returned to our home. I needed to contact my lawyer immediately. "Anyway, why isn't the $54,000 in your bank account?" "Did you take my bank account?" John asked. "I was planning to change the account for my salary deposit, but it disappeared. I've been looking for it." "Don't mess with me. We're married, it's a shared asset. You should share it with me." I wished he wouldn't yell over the phone. It hurt my ears. The inheritance is an individual asset, not a shared one. Plus, I've already filed for divorce. We're no longer a married couple. Please stop contacting me. I won't return home. It's okay for you to live there with your mistress. I could hear John catching his breath, but I hung up and immediately relayed his whereabouts to the law firm. That night, I received several calls from John, but I ignored them all and enjoyed a drink by myself. Having endured the suspicions of his affair for almost a year, I deeply appreciated the peacefulness I was experiencing. After a good night's sleep, I checked my phone and was shocked at the sheer volume of missed calls. I assumed my lawyer must have contacted him, causing him to panic. Hesitantly checking the messages, some were aggressive, like, "What do you mean by damages for the affair? If you knew, you should have said so." Others were apologetic. "Catherine, I'm sorry. It was my fault. I want to talk things over." Without replying, I left my phone behind and headed to work. In my bag was a new phone with a number John wouldn't know. This would be my main phone from now on. I had John's personality figured out, so I was well prepared. Later, my lawyer informed me that John insisted on discussing this face-to-face, so I decided it was time for a confrontation. I expected this and felt it was better to settle matters swiftly. I chose a family restaurant with semi-private booths for our discussion to avoid any public attention. As expected, John and his mistress arrived on time. Seeing John after months, he looked somewhat tired. Was it just my imagination? I had seen photos of his mistress, but it was my first time seeing her in person. She had her hair up in a bun and wore casual clothes. Her youthful face made me think she was a student, but I knew from my investigation that she was 25 and worked at a cake shop. I couldn't comprehend what such a cute girl saw in a 50-year-old man. "Catherine, what's going on?" "There's no inheritance, and now there's a claim for damages. I'm completely lost," John said, bewildered. Both my lawyer and I couldn't help but chuckle at his words. "The inheritance is what my father left for me, John. You have no right to it. As for the damages, it's because our divorce is due to your affair. You both owe compensation for the pain you caused me," I explained. "It's not about the affair, it's due to our incompatible personalities. Besides, it wasn't you who brought up the divorce, I did. So the affair doesn't matter," John retorted. Hearing such nonsense made me want to pull my hair out. I knew he wasn't the brightest, but I didn't expect him to lack basic common sense to this extent. The one at fault can't initiate the divorce. It's not about who brings it up first. It's about you having an affair. If that's true, you understand that you're in the wrong, right? Also, I'll be demanding compensation from her too." "What?" Why me? Despite her cute appearance, the mistress sounded very defiant and sharp. Is that true? John looked at the lawyer as if clinging to hope. Unfortunately, it is true, the lawyer confirmed. You said I'd be getting money. I wasn't told I'd have to pay. I'm going home, and since I'm divorcing you, this has nothing to do with me, she shouted, grabbing her bag and storming out of the restaurant. It was embarrassing as other customers turned to look at our table. We know where she works, so it'll be fine, the lawyer said with a reassuring smile, causing John's face to go pale. Perhaps he realized he couldn't escape. You know, that girl is quite headstrong. She used to be a good girl when we were having an affair. She was always smiling around me and would cry, saying she'd miss me when it was time for me to leave. John rambled. Even though he was talking about their affair, I didn't know how to react. After we started living together, her cooking wasn't great, and she constantly wanted new bags or clothes. It was cute at first, but being married to her was not what I expected. Even though they'd only been remarried for about a month, complaints about her started pouring out of John's mouth. I've realized something. I've always been comparing her to you, Catherine. You're skilled at housework, great at cooking, and you always waited for me to come home without a single complaint. So would you consider giving us another chance? I was left in disbelief, unable to keep my mouth shut. I never anticipated this turn of events, and even the lawyer seemed too stunned to speak. There's no way. Come on, I'll change. I promise I'll never cheat again, John pleaded. You cheated on me while using the excuse of being busy at work, didn't you? How can I believe anything you say? I countered. John lowered his head, repeating, I want to start over. You said you were busy with work when my father was dying. He was in critical condition for about a month, but you never visited him even once. Even though I was having a difficult time, you were cheating. After he passed away, were you just waiting for the inheritance? I noticed our drawer being opened several times where we kept our bank book. You probably planned to leave once the inheritance came in, right? With the divorce papers already filled out? As I listed each fact, John began to tremble. He probably never thought he'd get caught. You had a reservation to buy a nice apartment already, right? But unfortunately, since you didn't get the inheritance, you had to cancel. I assume the old house we lived in must have been unbearable for her, I continued. How do you know? John asked, his voice shaking. I have plenty of evidence. Are you thinking that if we get remarried, you won't have to pay the compensation? With that, John fell silent. I must have struck a nerve. Realizing he was only after my money made me feel sad and disappointed. If there's nothing more to discuss, I'm leaving, I said, standing up. Wait, John grabbed my arm as I tried to leave. Catherine, you're the most important thing to me. Please, I beg you, let's start over. John's eyes were filled with tears. I'll never betray you again, and I'll do all the chores. Please come back to me. Unable to contain his emotions, John began to sob uncontrollably. Come on, don't make a scene. Aren't you and your mistress newlywed? Why don't you two sort things out? Let's just move on with our separate lives. Turns out she's been cheating on me. She seems to have married me for my money. Without money, I'm just an old man. Seeing my ex-husband crumbling to the floor, crying, was undeniably pathetic, but I felt no obligation to comfort him. People had heard our conversation, and it was painfully embarrassing to witness everyone whispering about John. Leaving my crying ex-husband behind, I picked up the bill, and my lawyer and I left. Later, as the two of them adamantly refused to pay compensation, I consulted with John's parents over the phone. Having had little interaction with my rather shy in-laws who lived far away, this was my first call to them since thanking them for attending my father's funeral. To my surprise, I discovered John hadn't told his parents about our divorce or his remarriage to his mistress. This revelation left his parents in shock, with my ex-mother-in-law becoming bedridden from the strain. Give us some time, we're not sure what to do, was their unsure response, making it clear I couldn't rely on them. However, the next day, my father-in-law brought his brother to confront John. His brother, compared to John, was a lively, talkative, and cheerful man. John had often grumbled to me about how intimidating he was during family gatherings. Whatever transpired, his strong-willed brother made John agree to the compensation payment. Then his brother decided John would be taken back to the countryside. Tearfully, my father-in-law informed me of this decision. Since both in-laws were over 80 and had no income, they promised John would work at a factory owned by a relative nearby and pay me the compensation. As for John's mistress, her whereabouts were unknown, but since her workplace was known, they contacted her there. She shouted, "Don't contact my workplace." However, I spoke with a woman claiming to be the manager and was informed of an astonishing fact. It seems that the person John was referring to when he said, "She's cheating on me," was the husband of the store manager, and she was apparently preparing to sue them. I was assured that John's mistress would never escape justice, and true to that word, a few months later, I received the compensation payment. When I visited the cake shop to express my gratitude as expected, the mistress was nowhere in sight. Naturally, she was fired from the cake shop. She had dreams of becoming a pastry chef, but that's now believed to be impossible. Currently, to repay the compensation, she's juggling multiple jobs, and according to the store manager, she can often be seen at a nearby construction site. Out of sheer curiosity, I took a glance and noticed her without makeup, sweaty, and being yelled at by an older man while she worked. Having to pay compensation for the two affairs she had, she must be heaply in debt. I'm not sure how many years it'll take her to repay it, but she got karma for destroying someone's family. When I told my son about the divorce, he was genuinely surprised but said something along the lines of, "It's your life, you should live it as you see fit," which was a relief. My biggest concern had always been how my son would react, and with me approaching 50, I thought there'd be no chance for love or even remarriage. But lately, there's someone I've been interested in. He's the doctor who took care of my father in his final moments. Every time I visited the hospital, we'd end up chatting, and I found him to be very nice and wonderful. After the divorce, during one of my solo trips to the shopping mall, we bumped into each other, and in our conversation, I discovered that he was also divorced. We connected even more over our similar experiences. We've been out for meals a couple of times, and I always feel very comfortable around him. I don't know what the future holds, but I still hope and strive for happiness in my life.
I thought you were a good daughter-in-law, but it seems I was wrong. Leave this house and never come back. You're nothing but a parasite. Pack your things and go. Ever since my husband passed away, my mother-in-law Sarah and sister-in-law Catherine have been saying mean things to me. Even though I've been taking care of Sarah, my husband was worried about her until the end. And yet Catherine says bad things about him, and I couldn't help but argue back. If you both feel that way, I understand. I'll leave. When I said that, Sarah and Catherine were happy, but a few months later, they were begging me. The bad luck I wished for them was worse than I thought. My name is Emily. I'm 32 years old and work as a buyer for famous brands. I met my husband Tom through a friend. Tom was kind and calm, just the husband I wanted, so I said yes when he proposed. Tom's parents were independent, so I got along well with them and didn't have any problems with my mother-in-law. Having a caring mother-in-law and practical father-in-law seemed perfect to me. Tom worried about his mom's financial future because she didn't think much about money. He thought it would be fine as long as his dad, who was responsible with money, was healthy. Tom also had an older sister, Catherine, who was divorced and lived alone. He figured she'd take care of their parents later on. But Tom didn't fully trust Catherine. I'm worried about giving our family money matters to Catherine. Why? There were problems before. I didn't think much about Catherine's past then, but later, Tom's worries turned out to be true. After I married Tom and had a few peaceful years, his dad got sicker and died. Since Sarah always depended on her husband, she was devastated. It's tough now, Sarah, but let's try to move on. I've always let my husband handle everything. I don't know how to do it alone. Tom was worried about his mom living alone, and I share his concern. As our son, he must have been really stressed about it. Then, one night, he came to me with an idea. Emily, what if my mom comes to live with us? It was unexpected, but I had a feeling he might suggest this someday. But what about Catherine? What about her? Shouldn't she, as the daughter, take care of mom instead of us? I want to step up and take dad's place, looking after mom. She's not great with money, so I'll handle her finances too. Can't we ask Catherine to do that? No, that won't work. It was rare for Tom to firmly say no to my idea. I want to make sure dad's money is well taken care of, so mom won't struggle later on. Even though he felt bad about asking me to live together, Tom was determined to handle dad's inheritance and savings. It's okay. I think we'll all be happy living together with your mom. I'm genuinely worried about her being alone too. Oh, Emily, thank you so much. And so we started our new life as a family of 3 in Sarah's house. Just like she promised, Sarah left everything for her husband to handle, from bank accounts to bills and credit cards. She didn't really understand any of it. Tom managed her money separately from ours and decided to give her a monthly allowance for her expenses. Whenever Sarah was tempted by dodgy salespeople or pressured to buy expensive stuff by friends, it was Tom's job to guide her. If he didn't, she might end up with a lot of debt because she was careless with money. By taking on the role of her husband, Tom made his mom happy. Seeing her happier also made Tom feel better. Sarah helped out with the household chores since I was working, and everything was going smoothly. But our peaceful life came to an abrupt halt. Tom collapsed at work. He had the same illness as his dad and might have pushed himself too hard during a busy time, ending up in the hospital. Sarah and I visited him almost every day, but Tom didn't seem to be getting better. Emily, I need to talk to you about what happens after I'm gone. Don't say that. Let's focus on getting you better so we can go back to living with your mom, just like before. I knew I might get sick like Dad, so I'm prepared. But there's one thing I need you to do for me regarding Mom. Trying to hold back tears, I listened closely to my husband's last request. A few weeks later, Tom passed away. Dealing with telling relatives, sorting things out with his job, and planning the funeral kept me busy and distracted from the grief. Once everything was settled, I remembered what Tom had asked of me. There was no time to mourn now. I had to step into Tom's shoes and take care of my mother-in-law. I'm sorry I've been occupied lately, Sarah. From now on, I'll handle the money matters instead of Tom. Don't worry, I'll make sure we have enough for our monthly expenses. Emily, are you still going to stay with me now that Tom is gone? Absolutely. Tom always told me to take care of you. Let's keep supporting each other. I understand. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she spoke. I'm sorry for putting the burden of finances on you while you're already busy. Don't worry, keeping busy helps me cope, so it's actually helpful. But Catherine didn't seem happy about me living with her mom. When she found out I was not only staying but also handling the money, she burst into the house in anger. Why is Emily, an outsider, still here after Tom's gone? And why is she in charge of the money? Doesn't that seem strange to you? Before Tom passed away, he asked me to take care of Sarah and handle the finances. Are you just saying that conveniently? No, it's what Tom wanted. Is there some hidden reason behind this? And are you using Tom's name to your advantage? Catherine wasn't convinced, but she backed off for the time being. However, the next week she came back furious. Emily, what do you think you're doing? I saw everything. What are you talking about? You're having an affair, aren't you? An affair? I saw you going into a men's store and dining at a fancy restaurant with a man. Are you using Tom's money on your lover? That's not true. I haven't spent any money like that on someone else. Your excuses won't cut it. It hasn't been long since Tom passed away, and you're already moving on to someone new. Have you no shame? Mother, don't you agree? Influenced by Catherine's words, Sarah started to doubt me too. Emily, is it true? No, that's not what happened. I'm just following Tom's wishes, I tried to explain, but Catherine interrupted me. How dare you bring up Tom's name after cheating on him? How could you sink so low? I fell silent, feeling the cold stares from both Catherine and Sarah. Then Sarah spoke up. I used to think you were a good daughter-in-law, but I was wrong. I never want to see you again. Leave, Catherine chimed in triumphantly. That's right, parasites like you don't belong here. Determined not to let Tom's wishes go to waste, I endured it all. With that resolve, I remained silent. But Sarah and Catherine didn't stop there. They continued to hurl hurtful words at me. Poor Tom, picking someone like you. He was always so easily fooled, you know. Maybe he tricked you into thinking he'd handle the money, but actually used Mom's money for himself. To tarnish Tom's memory, especially when he cared so much about his mom, is unforgivable to me. I could handle them saying bad things about me, but I can't stand them insulting my late husband. I'm sorry, Tom, for not keeping our promise. I silently apologized to him as I turned to Sarah and Catherine. I understand. I'll leave like you both want. Hearing my words, the two exchanged looks and grinned. Finally seeing reason, huh? Leave the bank book here when you go. Sure. I handed over the bank book containing Sarah's living expenses and her husband's inheritance, then left the house. But 3 months later, I got a call from Sarah, whom I had distanced myself from. Emily, they're saying I can't pay my card bill. Why? What's happening? Maybe you spent too much and don't have enough left. You should check your balance using your bank book. Balance? How do I do that? It seems Sarah hadn't changed. She was still careless about money even after I left. As I thought this, Sarah started yelling at me angrily. This never happened when you were here. Suddenly after you left, the money's gone. You must have stolen it. I can't believe this. Come here right now. Furious, Sarah hung up the phone. Feeling heavy-hearted, I reluctantly went to her house. When I arrived, both Sarah and Catherine were waiting for me. Ignoring Sarah's anger, I accessed her online banking, checked the balance, and showed it to her. Here's the transaction history for this account. As you can see, while I was managing it, the balance never went negative. Do you understand why? Because I was saving money. It's hard to believe that you, who aren't good with money, would suddenly start saving. Actually, the balance stayed positive because I was depositing $1,500 every month for living expenses. Living expenses? I didn't know about that. Tom and I did it while he was alive. We decided to use our money to cover your expenses, so your savings wouldn't go down. Really? Tom did that? Yes, even after he passed away, I kept doing it with $1,500 from my own salary. But when you asked me to leave, I stopped. Then I continued, showing Sarah the transaction details. Let's see the transactions after I left. There are more than $1,500 being taken out, suggesting big expenses. I didn't change my spending habits. Maybe Catherine used it. With that, I shifted the conversation to Catherine. Looking at the details, there were car payments at fancy stores and restaurants. I can't picture Sarah spending money at those places. Catherine, do you have any clue? It wasn't me, but I can't think of anyone else who might have used it but you. Could it be you? Did you secretly use a family card or something? I've seen you at those shops and restaurants before. Even now, you're still using Mom's money. How low can you go? Can you just stop? I was there for work. The meals were for a meeting with a shop owner. Just because I say it's for work, you think you can't trust me. Fine, let's confirm it right now. I immediately called the shop owner. Thank you for always helping us out. Yes, it was last Friday, and the item was... Well, I was checking some details on the phone. Catherine just stared blankly. Thank you. Can you include that as well? Oh, I see. After ending the call and checking my email, I showed Catherine and Sarah the attached photo. It showed Catherine shopping at the store. What's this? Catherine looked shocked as she saw the photo. It seems the security camera caught you, Catherine, buying these luxury items. When I spoke to the shop owner, they confirmed it right away. I'm pretty sure the person in this photo is you. Don't you agree? Catherine was speechless. The shop owner also mentioned that items matching the ones you bought have been showing up at pawn shops lately. The dates and items match the ones when you used the card, right? Catherine's voice shook, and she seemed confused. Sarah, looking puzzled, asked Catherine, but why go through all this trouble? Buying something and then selling it to a pawn shop right away. Since Catherine didn't seem willing to answer, I spoke up. She probably needed cash quickly. If she took it straight from the bank account, it would have been noticed right away. So you tried to frame me by shopping at my workplace, making it look like I was the one spending money, didn't you? Catherine couldn't defend herself and stayed silent. Meanwhile, Sarah seemed to have more questions and kept pressing Catherine. Catherine, why do you need so much money? Well, I had debts to repay, Catherine confessed quietly. But I added more to her confession. You didn't tell Sarah about it, did you? Do you know why Catherine got divorced? It was because of her debts. Tom often mentioned how troubled he was because Catherine kept asking to borrow money. This has been going on since before Catherine got married. Even after she got married, Tom complained that Catherine's spending habits hadn't changed. You had debts. Sarah then remembered something. The money your father left you, Catherine. I gave you a bank book with the inheritance in it, didn't I? Don't tell me even that money. At Sarah's request, I checked the balance of the bank account where the inheritance was kept. Sarah, the bank account is completely empty. What? Completely empty. But a few days after I left the house, all the money was taken out of the account. No, this can't be. Sarah collapsed to her knees, yelling at Catherine in anger. What's the problem? I had to meet my repayment deadline. My father would have let me, his daughter, use the inheritance however I wanted. I can't believe Sarah is so stunned. It seems Tom was right all along. He always said letting Catherine handle money was risky. He probably saw this coming. Sarah gave Catherine a stern look. That money wasn't just for me, you know. You got your share of the inheritance, right? Who uses someone else's money? You're the one taking advantage of this house. Leave. We're done, Mom. Wait, didn't we agree that I would live here in Emily's place after she left? If I stay with someone like you, I'll end up in debt too. I expect you to return every cent of your father's inheritance. With those words, Sarah forcefully kicked Catherine out of the house. However, I'm unsure if it was the right outcome. Since then, we've lost all contact with Catherine, and Sarah never got back any of the misused inheritance. If she still had it, Sarah could have lived comfortably in her old age. But now, she lives in poverty and loneliness. On the other hand, even though Catherine used the inheritance to pay off her debts, her spending habits didn't change, and she's accumulated even more debt. Without money to repay her debts, she keeps moving to avoid her loan sharks. Only now do I truly feel the weight of Tom's passing. Though things turned out differently from Tom's last wish, I believe I haven't done anything wrong. Tom wanted me to prioritize my happiness above all else. Living with Sarah and Catherine would have gone against Tom's wishes for our well-being. I believe he would understand. From now on, with memories of Tom in my heart, I'll take a new step forward. I found out I have a serious sickness called leukemia, and the doctors say I need to stay in the hospital for a long time to get better. But when I told my family, they turned their backs on me, saying I deserved it. That's when it hit me. They don't really care about me. When I said I wanted to stop being part of their lives, they were happy about it, but they haven't realized yet how much they rely on me. My name is Sally, and I'm a stay-at-home mom in my 40s. My husband Michael and I have been married for almost 50 years. We have a daughter named Mia who just started middle school. Right now, I live with Michael, Mia, and my mother-in-law. Michael's mom raised him by herself after her divorce when he was young. Maybe she spoiled him too much because he's pretty selfish. Living with my mother-in-law made me see a side of my husband I hadn't noticed before we got married. When my husband found out I was going to have a baby, he was really happy. He couldn't believe it at first, but then he thanked me and said we would face any challenges together. I promised to do my best. But that joy didn't last long. When we found out we were having a girl during a checkup, my mother-in-law said something really hurtful to me. She said, "You never cook meat, do you?" I tried to explain that I cook a balanced diet, but she wouldn't listen. She even said that maybe the reason the baby was a girl was because I didn't eat meat. I was shocked and hurt. She kept saying we only needed boys and that having a granddaughter was the worst thing. She even called me useless. I tried to tell myself that as long as the baby was healthy, it shouldn't matter if it was a boy or a girl. But as time went on, my hopes were crushed. My husband started acting distant too, maybe because he was listening to my mother-in-law. He began treating me differently, and it hurt. "Michael, do you want to go shopping for baby stuff when you're off next?" "Do I have to? It's our baby, right?" "I want us to pick things out together." "Fine, but let's stick to the basics. Babies cost a lot, and we need to save. Then buy what you want with your own money." I had minimal income during maternity leave. I have to save for our child's future and cover clinic bills and baby expenses. I had to go along with what Michael and my mother-in-law said and only get the necessary baby stuff. I worried they wouldn't love our daughter when she arrived. But after Mia was born, Michael and my mother-in-law adored her. They loved her even more than I expected, so I stopped worrying. I planned to focus on parenting for a while. But when Mia turned 2, Michael told me to go back to work. I thought it would be okay since my mother-in-law loved Mia too. But when I returned to work, both my mother-in-law and Michael showered even more love on Mia. Michael started spoiling her, just like my mother-in-law had spoiled him. I tried to teach Mia right from wrong with love, but it seemed she didn't see it that way. Before I knew it, Mia didn't like me and preferred to be with my husband and mother-in-law. "Hey Mia, it's time for kindergarten. Let's go together." "I don't want to go with Mommy. I want Grandma." "Mia, Mommy has to work too. Let's go to kindergarten together, okay?" "I hate Mommy. I love Daddy and Grandma." "Mia, please don't say that." "No, Mommy, just go away." Mia's words were really hurting my feelings. My mental health was suffering because of it. But my husband and mother-in-law didn't try to stop her. Instead, they looked at me like I deserved it. These tough times continued for about 10 years. Even in middle school, Mia hasn't changed. She avoids me and sticks to my husband and mother-in-law. And because of that, she's become uncontrollable. She screams and breaks things when she doesn't get her way. When I try to discipline her, she yells back at me. "Mia, can we talk? Did you take money from my wallet?" "Yeah." "So what? You're my mom. You can give me money, right?" Taking without asking is wrong. Please give it back. No way. It's your fault for not getting me the Gucci wallet. I want it for my birthday. You're only in middle school. You don't need expensive things yet. I can get them when you're older. I want it now. Why don't you understand, you old hack? Mia, don't talk like that. You're so annoying, Grandma. Mom is being mean to me. When I scold her, Mia turns to my mother-in-law for help. And my mother-in-law sides with her, blaming me too. What's wrong, Mia? Did Mom upset you again? Listen, Grandma, she won't get me the Gucci wallet for my birthday. And she won't give me money either. Can you believe it? That's not fair. Your mom is being stingy. Grandma will get you the wallet next time, okay? Yay, thank you, Grandma. You're welcome. I love you, Grandma. Mia happily hugged my mother-in-law. Branded stuff is too much for her age, I thought. I disagreed with my mother-in-law. Wait, Mom, Mia is still in middle school. Shouldn't we hold off on buying her expensive things? I suggested. But maybe not yet. You're so stingy. I feel sorry for Mia having you as her mom, my mother-in-law snapped back. Every day, my mother-in-law spoiled Mia, buying her whatever she wanted. My husband did the same, filling our house with expensive stuff Mia barely used. Besides Mia's issues, there was another problem in our house. My mother-in-law's spending. I noticed she kept buying strange rings and bracelets. When I asked, she said a friend recommended them, but I suspected it was an MLM scheme. I wondered where she got the money since she was always buying things for Mia. Turns out, she was borrowing from banks. When I confronted her, she brushed it off, saying it wasn't my concern. I grew to hate dealing with family problems, so I threw myself into work, often working late. My husband and mother-in-law criticized me, but I didn't care. I just didn't want to be home. Then one day, I collapsed at work. Tests revealed I had leukemia, likely brought on by stress. I needed long-term treatment, so I was hospitalized. I called my mother-in-law from the hospital. I'm sorry to bother you, but I collapsed at work. I've been diagnosed with leukemia, and I need to stay in the hospital. You have leukemia? I hoped she'd be at least a little concerned about my illness. But that hope quickly faded. It's a good thing you finally got seriously sick. I was shocked by my mother-in-law's response. What? What are you saying? I asked. I've been annoyed with you every day. This serves you right, she said callously. That's a horrible thing to say. Hold on, let me talk to Mia. I asked to speak to Mia and my mother-in-law handed her the phone. What? Mia's response was something I never expected. Mom, are you sick? She asked. I'm sorry, Mia. I have to stay in the hospital for a while, I explained. Mia's reply crushed me even more. I'm actually glad. It's better without you bothering us. You're always mean to me. That's why you got sick. You deserve it. Are you serious right now? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's incredibly cruel. Everyone would be happier if I stayed sick. I have to tell Dad about this, I said to Mia before she hung up the phone. In that moment, I felt like giving up on my family. I had reached my breaking point. I decided I would be the one to cut ties with them. Mia was my daughter, but I endured so much pain to bring her into this world. I had hoped to raise her to be a good person, but her behavior was a combination of her innate personality and how my husband and mother-in-law raised her. Some might find it unthinkable for a parent to walk away from their child, but despite our blood connection, I couldn't forgive their behavior any longer. I called my parents and asked them to bring clothes because neither my husband, mother-in-law, nor Mia had visited me during my hospital stay. Months later, after successful treatment and full recovery, instead of returning to the house I shared with my husband, I returned to my parents' house and sought advice from a lawyer about getting a divorce. My mother-in-law and Mia agreed right away. Michael was hesitant at first, concerned about public perception, but eventually agreed under pressure from my mother-in-law and Mia. Since he cooperated, I was able to get a divorce and claim compensation. About 7 years passed. I moved out of my parents' house and lived near my workplace, healthy and energetic. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Michael. His voice sounded exhausted, and he quickly jumped into his problem. Hello, Sally, can you come back? What? Why all of a sudden? Things are tough for me right now. What do you mean? My mother, she's in a huge amount of debt. Michael had just found out about my mother-in-law's debt and reached out to me for help. The debt, which had been ignored for so long, had grown to a significant sum, and my mother-in-law could no longer keep it hidden from Michael. To my ex-husband's anxious plea, I replied calmly, "You're only noticing now. She's been in debt since I was there, from way back. It seems she got caught up in an M&M scheme. All the money she spent on spoiling Mia was borrowed from banks. I can't believe it. I had no clue. I tried to warn your mother several times, and I even tried talking to you about it. But every time, you just brushed it off. But not telling me about the debt is terrible, isn't it? If I had known earlier..." "Don't say that now. After all, I was in the hospital, and none of you even visited me once, remember? I'm sorry for that. Just help me out this once." "What are you talking about?" I snapped, losing my patience. My emotions boiled over, and I found myself shouting at Michael. "Do you think you can just apologize and everything will be okay? When I was sick and needed help, you abandoned me. I regret ever marrying you." My anger subsided, replaced by a sense of release. I had finally let out everything I'd been holding in. "You should end up in debt like your mother and suffer for once. Please, calm down. I'll apologize." "Shut up. It's disgusting to start relying on your divorced ex-wife now." In the background, I could hear Mia's voice. Then she took over the phone, sounding sad. "Mom, Grandma's in trouble because of her debts. Please help us." "It's not my problem. Don't ask me for help." Mia didn't give up, despite my quiet refusal. "Dad's struggling to repay Grandma's debts. I might not be able to afford college tuition and might have to drop out. Is that okay?" "So, Mom, why are you acting like this is someone else's problem? Your own daughter is in trouble." "Daughter? Who?" Mia's words made me chuckle. Just as she faced trouble, she emphasized she was my daughter, even though she never called herself that before. "What's so funny?" Michael asked. "I was just thinking about how you suddenly claim to be my daughter when you're in trouble, after calling me names all this time. That's not fair. I'm your biological daughter who's in trouble, But I don't have a daughter." "What?" "No, Mom. I made that decision 7 years ago when I was hospitalized. I don't need a family like you anymore. We're divorced, so we're just strangers now, okay?" "Mom, please don't say that." "Stop. Don't call me Mom because I'm not your mother. You should live happily with your father and grandmother who's in debt. Don't ever contact me again. You're just a burden in my life." With that, I ended the call and blocked their numbers to ensure they couldn't reach me again. After that, I heard that my ex-husband and mother-in-law were working tirelessly to repay their debts. They sold everything they owned, but it wasn't enough. They were struggling to make ends meet and even struggled to eat properly. My daughter couldn't afford her tuition and had to drop out of college. The expensive items she had were sold to pay off debts, leaving her with nothing. It seems even she is working to repay her grandmother's debts. It's heartbreaking to see my daughter facing such hardships compared to her peers. They really are foolish and helpless. They brought this upon themselves. As for me, I've purchased an apartment close to my workplace. I intend to invite my parents and live peacefully as a family of 3. From now on, I want to cherish each day with my true family and live happily. My name is Luna, and I've been married to Lucas for 3 years. We used to live alone when we were dating. But after we got married, we moved in with Lucas's dad because his job was nearby. Even after we got married, I kept working. But I had to quit my job because Lucas's dad needed help. He started having memory problems about 1.5 years ago. And it got worse over time, so he needed someone to take care of him. At first, we thought about sending him to a nursing home, but Lucas really didn't want to. He asked me to take care of his dad at home, so I agreed. "Luna, please, let's try to take care of my dad here. I don't want him to go to a nursing home," Lucas begged. I understood how he felt, but it was a big responsibility for me, and I wasn't sure if his dad wanted me to take care of him that much. So I asked Lucas to help me as much as he could. I had never seen Lucas beg like that before, so I thought he would support me. But taking care of his dad turned out to be harder than I thought. His dad needed help with simple things like walking, using the bathroom, and taking a bath. He could still move around, but he often tripped and fell because he couldn't support himself. So Lucas and I decided to change our house to make it safer for his dad. Even though we were still paying off debts, we realized that his dad's safety was more important. At first, Lucas helped a lot with taking care of his dad. But as time went on, he started saying he was too busy with work to help. And after about a year of taking care of his dad, he stopped helping altogether. He even started going out on his days off instead of helping me. My father-in-law's health was declining, and he needed more help with basic things like using the bathroom and taking a bath. It became too much for me to handle on my own, so I talked to my husband about it. "You promised to help, didn't you? When was the last time you actually helped out?" "It's been months," I said to him. "He needs more care than I can give him alone." I'm feeling overwhelmed, I added. "I think we should seriously consider putting him in a nursing home instead of trying to take care of him at home," I suggested. We agreed to take care of him at home until the end, but at least we should consider getting professional caregivers involved. Your dad needs more help than we can give him alone, and there are people who are trained to do this. I'm not strong enough to handle everything, especially tasks like bathing, I explained. But my husband didn't agree with me. He got upset and left before we could finish talking. Lately, I've noticed he's been stressed about money. However, I couldn't keep taking care of his dad on my own. So even without my husband's approval, I started arranging for home care services. His dad was assessed as needing a high level of care, so we arranged for a caregiver to come 5 times a week for about an hour each day. We also made a plan with our long-term care insurance, so I wasn't worried about the cost. But we hit a snag on the first day of home care services. "Hi, I'm Mira, your caregiver. I'm here to help you from now on," she said. "Nice to meet you, Mira. I'm looking forward to working with you," I replied. While the caregiver was talking to my father-in-law, she also taught me some nursing techniques. I found her guidance really helpful and felt confident about hiring her. But when my husband came home and saw her, he got really angry. "Luna, I never agreed to home care services. What's going on?" he yelled at me. "But I've been telling you that I can't do this all by myself anymore. I didn't do this without telling you." "I'm sorry, Miss Caregiver, but please go home for today," I tried to explain, but he didn't want to listen and sent the caregiver away. "Why did you arrange for home care without my permission? I'm the one who decides things around here. You're a terrible wife for not listening to me. You can handle caregiving alone. Don't waste money, especially since we still have to pay off the loan for the renovation. Why can't you see what I'm saying? I've told you many times that I can't do this all by myself, Lucas. You've stopped helping with caregiving, haven't you? That's not keeping your promise. And the renovation was necessary for safety. If your dad falls and gets hurt, taking care of him will be even harder. You might not get it because you haven't been doing any caregiving for over a year now. Why are you bringing this up all of a sudden? Besides, you're not working, so it's your job to take care of him, right? Who do you think is paying off the loan for that renovation?" No matter how much I tried to explain, my husband didn't understand. He really believes that I should do everything by myself. After that, I only had the caregiver come when my husband was at work. Talking to her about not just caregiving, but also the issues with my husband and getting advice was really helpful. After months of the same routine, one day my husband unexpectedly offered to take care of his dad himself. "You've been cooped up for over a year. Go treat yourself. I'll handle everything today," he said. I happily accepted his offer. I got a long overdue haircut and enjoyed some time at a coffee shop I used to frequent. But after about 4 hours, I started feeling anxious about leaving my inexperienced husband in charge, so I decided to head home early. When I got back, the house was unusually quiet. My father-in-law was peacefully asleep in his room. Assuming my husband had also worn himself out and fallen asleep, I went to check the bedroom, but he wasn't there. As I sat in a quiet house, I noticed an envelope placed on the dining table. When I opened the envelope, I found divorce papers already filled out along with a letter. The letter took me completely by surprise. "Even after we divorce, please continue taking care of my dad. I'm going on a trip for a week, so please file the divorce papers." As I read those words, it hit me. His sudden offer to take care of his dad was just a way to get me out of the house so he could prepare for his trip. And the fact that he had already prepared divorce papers was a shock. What's more, he expected me to continue caring for his dad even after we split up. I couldn't comprehend his thinking at all, so I called him immediately. When I read the letter, I found the divorce papers. "What's going on? Who are you going on a trip with?" "I'm at the airport about to board. I'm busy, and frankly, I don't care anymore. It doesn't matter who I travel with. We're getting divorced. Just make sure those papers are filed by the time I get back from my trip. That's all." With those words, my husband abruptly ended the call and hung up. Just before the line went dead, I heard a woman's voice calling out his name on the other end. It became clear that he was with someone else, the person he was traveling with. We'd only been married again for 3 years, and now I was facing the possibility that he was having an affair. As I thought about how he might have been cheating on me while I was busy taking care of his dad, tears of regret filled my eyes. "Luna," my father-in-law's voice called out to me as I left. He had been struggling to remember my name lately, but today he said it clearly. Worried about how well my husband had taken care of him while I was away, I hurried to see him. "Father, are you feeling all right? Did everything go smoothly while I was out?" I asked, concerned for his well-being. "Luna, is the caregiver coming today?" My father-in-law seemed surprisingly lucid and able to hold a conversation. "No, she won't be here until tomorrow morning," I replied. "Ah, I see. Could you bring me some paper and a pen?" he requested. My father-in-law, who usually struggled with writing due to his condition, seemed different today, more refined. I remembered reading that writing could help with dementia symptoms, so I agreed and fetched him some paper and a pen. He began writing something, but I couldn't see what it was. After he finished, he placed the paper in an envelope and handed it to me. "Give this to the caregiver when she comes tomorrow," he said before drifting back to sleep. Was this some sort of dementia exercise with Mila? Although I was curious about the letter's contents, I decided not to peek. Later, when my father-in-law woke up, he seemed to have forgotten everything, even my name. It left me wondering what had happened. That night, after he had gone to bed, I found myself pondering over the letter and divorce papers again. Reflecting on my husband's recent actions, I began to realize there might have been signs of something suspicious. I had been so focused on caregiving that I hadn't paid attention to him. If he was indeed cheating, part of me wanted to divorce him immediately and leave. But I couldn't abandon my father-in-law. Besides, without a job while taking care of him, I worried about supporting myself after a divorce. As morning arrived, I still hadn't made a decision. Mira came by, and I handed her the letter from my father-in-law. After reading it, she approached me looking troubled. And then, the caregiver. "I'm here to support you, Luna. We've built a friendship, and moments like these are more common than you might think. I'm here for you," Mira reassured me with a kind smile. "The letter is about me getting a divorce?" I asked, feeling confused. "Yes, it seems Mr. Henry noticed something wasn't right and asked me to step in. He wrote in the letter about his wishes regarding his estate. There's more to it, but we can discuss that later. Since your husband will be back soon, let's act quickly," Mira suggested. With that, Mira arranged for another caregiver to take over Mr. Henry's care and urged me to follow her. We ended up at a law firm. "Mira, why are we here?" I asked, puzzled. "You'll understand once we're inside," Mira replied cryptically. Even though I was still confused, I followed Mira into the building. "Thank you for coming today. I'd like to discuss a request I received from Mr. Henley regarding gifting property during one's lifetime. Specifically to you, Luna," the lawyer explained as we took our seats. The lawyer handed me a document and said, "Yes, it's notarized." Mr. Henley requested this document prepared by Mira. It states that Mr. Henley wishes to gift you $36,000 and his apartment during his lifetime. Stunned by this revelation, Mira started to explain. "On the first day of my home visit, Mr. Henley mentioned this. He wanted to express his gratitude to you, Luna. However, as you weren't legally adopted by him, he couldn't pass on his assets to you through inheritance. So he decided to make this gift during his lifetime. I'm incredibly grateful. I need to thank my father-in-law right away," I said, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. "Before we head back, there's one more place we need to stop by," Mira said, leading me out of the law firm. We made another quick stop before finally returning home. Once we were back, I expressed my heartfelt gratitude to my father-in-law, even though he didn't seem to fully understand. I kept telling him how thankful I was. Sadly, 3 days later, he passed away due to complications from his worsening dementia. I tried calling my husband, who was still traveling abroad, but he didn't pick up, perhaps assuming it was about the divorce. "There's no other option," Mira said, guiding me through the necessary arrangements. As we gathered with relatives to make preparations, my husband's absence, being the biological son of my father-in-law, was a point of contention for some. 2 days later, my husband returned home, completely unaware of what had transpired. He was immediately bombarded with questions from all sides. Hey, help me out here. I swear I'm not cheating. I was just taking a vacation to unwind after being a caregiver every day, my husband protested. You can't lie twice. Even if you claim you were caregiving, there's no evidence to support that, I countered. I know for a fact that you went on that vacation with your mistress. Security cameras at the airport caught you two acting like lovers, I added firmly. With that revelation, my husband seemed to resign himself to the judgmental stares from the relatives. Several days later, once the tension had eased, I proceeded to file for divorce. I planned to move into the apartment my father-in-law had gifted me before his passing. As I made preparations for the move, my husband called. Luna, where are you? I just found out that I'm not the beneficiary of his life insurance, you are. All I was supposed to get was his life insurance. What are you going to do about this? He demanded. What did you tell my dad while you were taking care of him? You and that female caregiver must have conspired together. You two planned this, he accused angrily. It was your father's wish. Mira and I only followed his instructions, I explained calmly. Well, we're divorced now, and you and your mistress will be hearing from my lawyer soon. Make sure to pay up for the compensation, I added firmly. What do you mean we're divorced? Besides, since you got my dad's life insurance, you can consider it as your consolation money, right? So I don't owe you anything, my husband retorted arrogantly. It seemed he had forgotten that he had left me the divorce papers to file before he left for his trip. I was surprised by his callous attitude. The divorce papers were left by you with a letter asking me to submit them, weren't they? And the life insurance is a precious inheritance from your father, not something I received from you. So you should cover the compensation, I insisted firmly. My husband was speechless at my words, unable to respond. We realized we weren't making any progress and decided to end the call. He continued to call several times afterward, but following Mira's advice, I changed my phone number. I still see Mira occasionally. Even after my father-in-law passed away, she did more for both him and me than my own family, including my husband. I'm truly grateful to her. Eventually, it seemed that the truth reached my husband and his mistress, and I received a call from their lawyer. Lucas told me you were the one in charge, even though I didn't know the full story. I'm sincerely sorry for going on that trip while Lucas's father was struggling. I've already paid the compensation, and I don't plan to see Lucas anymore, she said. That's how things went down. I thought they might refuse to pay, so I was surprised when they didn't. I can't figure out why someone smart like her would fall for my husband. Anyway, he ended up having to pay her in bits. She was pretty well off, and my husband, trying to impress her, spent almost all his savings. I even heard he paid for a fancy trip out of his own pocket. Whether he blew through his savings or not doesn't really matter to me. I'm determined to make him pay back every cent, even if it takes a while. Luckily, we have a family home under my father-in-law's name, so finding a place to live won't be an issue. But with the payments for the loan we took out for elder care, along with the compensation we have to pay each month, it's going to be tough. Even if we deduct it from my husband's paycheck, he won't have much left over. And since our relatives all know about it, he can't exactly ask them for help. I hope he learns from his mistakes. I moved into an apartment my father-in-law gave me, which I get to keep for life. Life's comfortable now. I'm using the money I inherited from my father-in-law to study caregiving. Mira's helping me out too. I want to be a caregiver like her, someone who can really support families. Mommy, wake up, wake up. My daughter shook me gently, her face full of worry. Sarah, what's wrong? I asked, rubbing my eyes as I woke up. Mommy, I think you shouldn't be with Daddy anymore, she said urgently. I was wide awake in an instant, confused by her words. What do you mean? I asked, trying to understand. Sarah explained that she thought it would be better if Dad and I split up. Why would you say that? I was shocked by her suggestion, but as she explained, I realized she had a point. My name is Emma Simpson, and I'm a 34-year-old mom who works full-time. I sell insurance for a big company. Balancing work and taking care of Sarah, especially since I have to drop her off and pick her up from daycare, is tough. I have to finish all my work between 9 o'clock a.m. and 5 o'clock p.m. I've been doing this job since before I got married, and now more than 10 years have flown by. I've worked hard and earned my place in the company. Even though I have a family, I can't afford to slack off at work. Why do I work so hard? It's for my daughter, Sarah. She just turned 5, and she's such a bright kid. Sometimes I'm amazed by how mature she is for her age. My husband and I want to give Sarah all kinds of experiences and lessons, but in today's world, everything costs money. So for Sarah's future, I need to work hard to earn as much as I can. I push myself every day just in case something unexpected happens. Some people might say, you don't need to work so hard. Doesn't your husband earn enough? Well, yes, he does work. But here's the thing, my husband's job isn't very stable. He works for a company that hasn't been doing well lately, so his salary keeps getting smaller. Right now, it's only about a third of what I make. It's hard to rely on him for money. The other night, after Sarah went to bed, my husband came to me nervously. Emma, can I borrow some money? He asked. What for? I haven't even got this month's paycheck yet, I replied. I promise I'll pay it all back next month. I had a few drinking parties and some other expenses. I'm short on cash, Keith explained. Wait, you spent your entire salary on yourself? I can't believe it, I said, surprised. I'm sorry, but I couldn't say no. Lately this has been Keith's behavior. He always finds an excuse not to give me the agreed living expenses and even asks me for money. He usually says it's for drinking parties or to help his parents. I can't be sure if he's really spending money for those reasons, but I've stopped confronting him about it. It seems like he always relies on my money. What would he do if I didn't lend it to him? Remembering our past talks, Keith mentioned he finds it hard to save money and his bank account is almost empty. That means if he needs cash, he has to borrow it from somewhere, possibly getting into debt. With a 5-year-old daughter, I don't want her to grow up thinking her dad is bad with money, so I usually end up lending him money. Okay, how about $200? You're a lifesaver, Emma. I promise I'll pay you back everything next month, Keith said gratefully. You always say that, but you've never actually paid me back, have you? I replied, feeling frustrated. Well, I'm sorry. But this time, I'll definitely pay you back. And I'll stop going to drinking parties, Keith promised. You better think it through. Our priority is Sarah, I reminded him. I know, Keith said, sounding remorseful. I couldn't help but wonder if Keith truly understood the seriousness of our situation. Doubting him made me feel awful, but sometimes it was hard not to. I let out a deep sigh, feeling conflicted. I support Keith so much not just because he's my husband, but because he's an amazing dad to Sarah. Every weekend he makes sure to spend quality time with her. One morning, Keith suggested, Emma, I'll take care of Sarah today. Why don't you go out and relax? But I have so much to do at home, I replied. Don't worry about it. We can order lunch and tidy up together. I'll handle what I can, Keith insisted. Really? Sarah, still half asleep, smiled. Can you wait, Sarah? It'll be just you and Daddy playing, I said to her. Rubbing her eyes, Sarah hugged me and said, I'm fine with that, Mommy. Okay then, maybe I'll go shopping for a bit, I said, feeling a bit relieved. Yay. But don't forget to get me something too, Sarah exclaimed. I'll bring back your favorite bread, I promised. Yay, thank you, Mommy. Sarah cheered, her face lighting up with joy. Sarah, at just 5 years old, behaves surprisingly well. Of course, I wouldn't leave her alone at home. Even though I felt a bit nervous about leaving her with my husband, just in case, I left a note in Sarah's bag with my phone number on it. I always remind her, call me if anything happens. Everything will be okay. That day, I went shopping by myself for the first time in a while. But even after browsing the department store, I couldn't find anything I really wanted. So instead of buying something for myself, I picked out some clothes I thought Sarah would like and got her favorite chocolate croissant. I'm home, I announced as I opened the door. Sarah came running to me with a big smile. Mommy, welcome back. How was shopping? Did you have fun? I'm back, Sarah. It was nice to have some time to myself. Here's the surprise I got for you, I said, handing her the treats. Wow, a chocolate croissant and new clothes too. Can we have the croissant tomorrow morning? Wait, where's Daddy? Oh, Daddy's out on the balcony talking on the phone, I replied. On the phone? Who's he talking to? I wondered aloud. When I peeked out onto the balcony, I saw Sarah was right. My husband was happily chatting away while smoking. When I tapped on the window, he looked surprised and quickly ended the call, asking, You're back already? Yeah, I'm back. But who were you talking to? I asked. Oh, it was just work stuff, he replied casually. You left Sarah alone inside the house? I asked, feeling a bit frustrated. I'm sorry it came up suddenly. Sorry, Sarah. He apologized, looking sheepish. Sarah looked disappointed and said, Mommy, did you know? Daddy said he'd play with me, but he was on the phone a lot today. Really? Yeah, you're right. He promised we'd read a book together. I confirmed, feeling a bit let down. When I looked at my husband, he seemed regretful. That night, we had dinner together as usual, and I bathed Sarah. Because I felt bad for leaving her alone during the day, I tried to spend extra time with her. After Sarah fell asleep, I had a serious talk with my husband. Keith, are you really that busy? It feels like you're always on work calls, even on weekends. Yeah, the workload has been crazy, and I've had to do a lot of overtime. So when I've been coming home late lately, it's because of work, not going out drinking. Okay, it's because of work, but when you're on the phone, can you make sure to spend time with Sarah too? Work is important, but so is our family, I reminded him. Okay, but Sarah looked really lonely. From now on, when I go out, I'll take Sarah with me. And if you're going to be busy with work, just let me know in advance, Keith promised. Got it. I'm going to bed now, Keith said, bidding good night before heading to the bedroom with his phone. For the past 6 months, Sarah and I had been sleeping in the same bed more often, while Keith slept alone in the bedroom. Although I enjoyed sleeping next to Sarah, I couldn't deny that our time together as a couple had decreased. Keith didn't seem bothered by it, but as a woman, I sometimes felt a twinge of loneliness. Then, one night, Mommy, wake up. Sarah's sudden voice jolted me awake. I glanced at the clock. It was 2 a.m. in the quiet darkness. Keith must be asleep in the other room. I sat up and asked Sarah what was wrong. Mommy, I have a request, Sarah said seriously. A request? What is it? I want you to break up with Daddy. What? Sarah's words snapped me out of my drowsiness instantly. What did you just say? Mommy, I want you to break up with Daddy. Sarah had indeed said those words. Trying to mask my shock, I looked into her eyes. Why would you say something like that? Because, Mommy, if things stay like this, you're in danger. Danger? What do you mean? I'm okay. But Dad, he wants to hurt you. What happened, Sarah? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she cried, but she seemed to calm down a bit when I gently stroked her back. Earlier, when I got up to use the bathroom, I heard Dad talking on the phone in his room. Really? What was he talking about? I asked, feeling a mix of worry and confusion. He said it would be good if something happened to you, Emma, so we could get the insurance money. What's insurance money? I asked, though deep down, I already knew. They were talking about hurting me on purpose. Why, Keith? Why would he say that? Also, Daddy said, I love you on the phone, but not to you. It was to someone else, Sarah added. Don't worry, Sarah. I'll make sure everything's okay. I reassured her, though tears were welling up in my eyes again. My daughter, so young yet so perceptive. She must have sensed something was wrong. Children are often very aware of their parents' feelings and actions, even at a young age. Despite her tender years, Sarah must be worried about my safety. At that moment, tears of gratitude and anger mixed in my eyes. Gratitude towards Sarah for her bravery and concern, and anger and sadness towards Keith for his actions. My little girl trying so hard to protect me. Now that she's spoken up, it's time for me to take action too. I have to do something about this situation myself. Looking at Sarah, I began to speak slowly. Sarah, I need to talk about something very important. Can you listen carefully? I'm listening, Mommy. And if what you said earlier is true, then you can't stay with Daddy anymore, right? That's right. I'm considering leaving this house. What do you think, Sarah? Sarah paused for a moment, thinking deeply, but then she looked at me with determination and replied, I want to stay with you, Mommy. Are you sure about leaving? Yes, I'm sure. I can't be without you. Thank you, Sarah. Let's go. Okay. I instructed her to quietly and quickly gather her things. Sarah began to pack her backpack, being careful not to make any noise to alert her father. I hadn't realized how mature and responsible she had become. Touched by her growth, I too prepared to leave, leaving my wedding ring on the living room table. Together, we left the house. It was still dark outside when we arrived at my parents' house and rang the doorbell at 5:00 a.m. My mother, looking sleepy, answered the door. Emma and Sarah, too. What brings you here so early? I'm sorry for dropping in like this, Mom. Can we stay here for a while? Of course, dear. But what's going on? There's something you need to talk about. After my mother showed me to the living room, she put Sarah to bed in the adjacent room. Sarah looked exhausted and quickly drifted off to sleep. A comforting cup of tea sat on the table in front of me, courtesy of my mother. Taking a sip, I gathered my thoughts and began to speak. It seems Keith is planning something involving me, possibly an accident, I said, the words heavy on my tongue. My parents were stunned into silence. My father, trying to maintain his composure, asked, "What do you mean? Why would Keith do such a thing?" Sarah overheard Keith talking on the phone. He told the person he loved her. "I suspect he's having an affair." That's unbelievable. An affair? But Sarah only heard the call. How can you be sure? My father's disbelief was evident in his tone. I brought Keith's tablet. If we look into it, things might become clearer, I said, pulling out the tablet from my bag. Since Keith wasn't likely using his phone to communicate with his lover, he must have been using this tablet instead. When I opened it, I found that it wasn't locked. As I cautiously scrolled through the screen, my suspicions were confirmed when I opened the email app. There were numerous exchanges with a woman I didn't recognize. This, my mother pointed at the screen, appears to be a detailed plan to cause an accident involving you. I quickly snapped photos of the emails as solid evidence and printed out the conversation for future reference. Just then, my cell phone rang from inside my bag. Glancing at the screen, I saw it was a call from Keith. With determination, I answered the call and switched to speaker mode. "Hello, what's up, Emma? Where are you?" I woke up and no one was in the house. "I'm worried," Keith's voice came through. "Is that all you have to say? Really? What do you mean?" "I'm worried about the two of you," I retorted, my voice trembling with anger. "How dare you say that? Are you planning to get me caught in an accident?" Keith's response was swift, his tone defensive. "What? Why would you say that?" Keith's voice over the phone sounded shaken. He must have been shocked to realize that I knew about the secret plan he had been hiding. He probably used to call his mistress while I was asleep. Now that he knew I was aware of everything, he must be completely confused. And he probably hasn't realized yet that I have a reliable ally in Sarah. "I heard it from Sarah. You planned to cause an accident so you could get insurance money," Sarah interjected. "That's not true. It can't be," Keith denied vehemently. "And what can't be true?" "Sarah told me about your conversations with your mistress. I know about your plan to harm me and claim the insurance money," I said firmly. "Why would she say that?" Keith's protest sounded feeble, confirming my suspicions about both the affair and the accident plan. Keith seemed at a loss for words, inadvertently admitting the truth. His guilt was undeniable. "I never thought you could stoop so low. I'll raise Sarah properly. Why don't you go live happily with your mistress? I never want anything to do with someone like you again. Remember this. I'll never forgive this betrayal." I couldn't help but raise my voice in anger as I spoke to Keith. Without waiting for his response, I hung up the phone. "It seems I woke up my daughter with my raised voice," I said, noticing Sarah standing in the doorway. "Mommy, are you okay?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with concern. "Sorry, Sarah. Did I wake you up?" I asked, feeling guilty. "No, don't worry about it. What happened with Daddy?" Sarah's concern was evident in her voice. "It's okay now. You don't have to worry anymore," I reassured her. "Really? Are we safe? Can we always be together?" Sarah's eyes were filled with hope. I nodded and smiled at my daughter's bright eyes. Then I hugged Sarah tightly, comforting her. Soon after, I made the decision to divorce Keith. Through my lawyer, I successfully claimed a significant amount in child support. Although Keith's actions could have warranted police intervention, I didn't want to cause any more disruption for Sarah's sake. I completely cut ties with Keith and left the legal matters to my lawyer. I later heard that Keith was abandoned by both his parents and his mistress shortly afterward. Now he struggles to pay child support and settle property division. On the other hand, Sarah and I started a new life in a new house. Sarah adjusted well to her new nursery school and seemed to enjoy every day. While there may be challenges ahead for us, I believe that with Sarah by my side, we can overcome anything. She is my absolute partner, and together we can face whatever comes our way. So here's the deal. I'm going to buy that fancy car from you. Margareta doesn't need it. She's just a regular person. My parents mentioned they wanted a new car, and since I got married to Brandon, he's been acting pretty selfish. He's been eyeing up the nice car my parents gave me, and I've had enough of it. My name's Margareta. I'm 25, and I met Brandon in college. We've been married for 2 years now. Brandon is outgoing and popular. Unlike me, I'm shy and don't have many friends. We started talking more during college classes, then we began studying together. I never thought someone like Brandon would be interested in me, but he surprised me by asking me out. I was really happy and said yes right away. That's how our relationship started. It made sense why I liked Brandon. He was handsome, friendly, and serious about his studies. But for him, things should have been different. He had lots of cute, stylish female friends. Finding another girlfriend wouldn't have been hard for him. Once, I bravely asked him, "Do you really think I'm the right one for you?" He seemed surprised and asked why I was bringing it up. I admitted, I'm not very confident. I wanted to know why he chose me. After thinking for a moment, he said, "I guess it's comfortable being with you." I wasn't satisfied, but before I could say anything, he seemed annoyed and started playing with his phone. Not wanting to argue, I quickly ended the conversation. "Yeah, you're right. Sorry for bringing it up." Even though I still had doubts, our relationship kept going smoothly. Time passed quickly. We finished college, got married, and moved into a condo. I got a job at a regular company while Brandon went off to do more school and research. When I told my mom we were getting married, she was really happy. She said, "That's great news." We were starting to worry. "We thought you'd introduce us to a boyfriend sooner." I felt bad for not telling them about Brandon earlier, but Mom understood. She said I've always been independent, handling things on my own. Knowing Brandon was there for me made her feel better. My parents met in college and still love each other a lot, which I admire. Dad worked hard, climbing up the ladder at a big company. Mom supported him and also pursued her passion for cooking. She became really good at it and even teaches cooking classes now. They respected each other's lives and gave each other space. Growing up with them, I learned to be independent too. I wasn't great at much except studying, so I didn't go to grad school. I wanted to be self-sufficient and start my own life soon. Even though I grew up in a well-off family, I didn't want to rely on them forever. I wanted to have a family of my own, like Mom and Dad. I hope to make them proud by having kids someday. It might sound simple, but for someone like me, it's a big goal. Once we moved in together, Brandon started acting more selfishly. He was a grad student and worked part-time, but he didn't pitch in much for our living costs. I tried bringing it up gently, saying, "Hey, Brandon, it would be really helpful if you could contribute more of your part-time earnings towards our expenses." But he just coldly replied, "I do contribute some, you know. And didn't you say you'd handle the living expenses when we moved in together, Margareta?" Brandon always talked about wanting to be a professor, which is why he went to grad school. I had assured him not to worry about money when we got married, telling him I had a good job. I murmured, "Yeah, I did say that," feeling unsure about what to say next. Brandon sighed heavily. "You wouldn't get it. Being a grad student costs a lot for socializing and stuff. Oh, and by the way, I need money for a research trip. Can you lend me $500? I'll pay you back later." Brandon's financial pressure became more common and our problems got worse. He started spending more nights away from home, leaving me waiting by the phone with cold meals in front of me. When he did come home happy for a change, I was too forgiving. He'd sometimes say things like, "Hey, Margarita, remember you wanted to go somewhere? I have tomorrow off. Let's go." He'd bring up outings out of nowhere or compliment my cooking, making me feel special. Each time he was nice to me, I'd catch a glimpse of the happy married life I wanted, and it made me hesitate. But I knew this wasn't normal. I felt lonely and anxious, but I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't want to upset my parents, who were thrilled about our marriage, but they must have started to notice something wasn't right. When I finally visited my parents after a long time, Dad suggested I stay over and have dinner with them. Mom cooked a big meal to welcome me back. During dinner, Dad mentioned my Aunt Ellen had visited recently and wanted to see me. He said she's always spontaneous like that. Ellen was lively, ambitious, and independent. "I'll reach out to her soon, thanks, Dad." Dad mentioned how much my Aunt Ellen loved me and how she always teased about Brandon stealing me from her, even though she didn't want to get married herself. That's just how she was. Before I met Brandon, Ellen was more like a close friend than an aunt. I could talk to her about anything, even things I couldn't tell my parents. She understood me better than anyone and was always there for me. At first, I was too shy to tell her about Brandon, but I wanted to see her again and show her I was doing okay. A few days after staying with my parents, I met Ellen at a cafe. She was dressed really stylishly, as usual. Ellen checked out my outfit and said gently, Margarita, marriage is just the start of a lifelong journey for a woman. You should always feel confident and attractive, no matter what. Your clothes can make a big difference, so don't forget to take care of yourself. Then she took a sip of her tea gracefully. I totally forgot about fashion lately. I'm sorry for not keeping in touch for so long. I murmured apologetically. Ellen replied, That's typical of you, Margarita. It's good to be honest and serious, but being too timid usually comes from lack of experience. But I was thrilled when I heard you found someone special. I thought, finally, Margarita is taking a step forward. It had been ages since I spent time with someone outside on a day off, and the weather was perfect. We sat on the terrace, basking in the warm sunlight. In that peaceful moment, I felt like I could talk to Ellen about my worries without feeling too down. I had hoped even someone as shy as me could make it work with Brandon at first. But Ellen listened to my whole story without interrupting, just nodding kindly. When I finished, she asked, I suppose you haven't mentioned this to your parents, have you, Margarita? No, I even hesitated to tell you today. I didn't want to admit my weaknesses to anyone. I thought I should be able to handle this on my own, to be truly independent. I know if Mom and Dad found out, they'd want to bring me back home right away. So I want to try to deal with this by myself as much as possible. Ellen respected my decision and didn't push further, but she added, If you ever really need help, let me know first. If my dear Margarita asks for help, I'll be there for you no matter where I am. A month later, Mom called and said, When you have time, could you come over? It's not urgent. Since I had the next day off, I went to see my parents. When I saw a car parked in the driveway, I couldn't contain my excitement. Dad, is this car new? Did you just get it? Dad, can I really take it for a spin? What if I crash it? I teased, feeling excited about the fancy car. Don't worry about that. This card is for you, Margarita. Use it however you like. It'll come in handy, Mom whispered to me. We saw this car in a TV commercial, and you said you liked it, Dad recalled. So it's our gift to you. You've been going through a tough time lately, so we wanted to cheer you up. If things get tough, just drive this and come home anytime, he said with a warm smile. The car Dad got for me was an SUV from a famous foreign brand, and he even arranged a parking spot near my condo. I couldn't believe it, and I laughed in disbelief. Later, when I was driving downtown, I reached into my pocket, found the car key, and pressed the button. The lights flashed in all directions. Just then, I heard a familiar voice calling out from behind. What's with the car? I turned to see Brandon, my husband, who hadn't been home in a while. It felt like we were living separate lives. I was speechless as he looked at the car with a smug expression. Ah, I see. A gift from your parents, right? Every time I faced Brandon, I struggled to find my voice, but I was tired of feeling that way. Brandon, don't you care anymore? Do you even care about me? I managed to say, gathering my courage. Then Brandon said something shocking. Are you just realizing now? Did you really think I loved you all this time? It's ridiculous how hopeful you are. His dry laugh rang in my ears. Something inside me snapped, and I blurted out, louder than usual. Then why did you marry me? Wow, really? You're going to be that cold about it? I couldn't believe what Brandon was saying. So marrying me was just a meal ticket for you, huh? And now you want the car too because it's wasted on me? That's just great. Brandon didn't seem to care about how hurtful his words were. And if you say no, we're getting divorced. Without me, you'll never find another man. So think about it. With those words, Brandon left without a second thought, leaving me feeling angry and heartbroken, my head pounding with a headache. I sat in a driver's seat for a while, trying to calm down. Eventually, I called my Aunt Ellen for advice. A few days later, I agreed to the divorce and moved back in with my parents. They welcomed me with open arms, and life started to feel peaceful again. But that peace was short-lived. One afternoon, Brandon showed up at my parents' house with his parents. They sat down in the living room, and Brandon's father spoke up in a stern tone. We're here to talk about our son's divorce. It's urgent. When drafting the divorce papers, Margarita warned Brandon, If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll use my parents' connections at the university to ruin your future. It wouldn't be hard to damage the career of a junior registrar if their daughter complains. Brandon truly loved Margareta. Her behavior was too harsh. It's clear she was trying to intimidate him. We could easily challenge the divorce, Brandon's father said, feeling deceived by Margareta. Behind her plain appearance, she's actually a mean and greedy woman. Poor Brandon. I heard she paid him to stay away. She must have had other men over. We need to go to family court and claim that Brandon was threatened by his wife. But if there's a proper apology, things might change. For example, if Margareta gives up that car she's driving, it might help smooth things over. Brandon and his parents remained silent, just listening to their parents' protests. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Mom went to answer it. Ellen appeared behind Mom as she came back to the living room. Sorry I'm late. How's the discussion going? Brandon's family had met Ellen once at my wedding. What are you doing here? It's rude to barge in like that. We're busy right now. Outsiders should leave. Brandon's mother objected. No, don't be like that. You've heard about Brandon's divorce, right? How would an outsider like you know about that? I had been informed by my brother earlier. I couldn't miss such an important moment for my dear niece, Ellen said, offering a reassuring glance. You're probably here to stop the divorce or for money. Can you still say that after seeing this? Ellen pulled out a stack of documents from her bag, laid them out on the table, and showed them to everyone. I hired a detective to look into this. It turns out Brandon has been cheating on Margareta with multiple women despite being married. He hardly came home because of it. He took advantage of Margareta's kindness and even asked her for money. That's ridiculous. I was just busy with my research at the university. When I did come home, we ate together and went on trips, right? We were like any other married couple, right, Margareta? Say something. Brandon, you don't need to defend yourself. We'll handle this. It's not your fault. We understand, his father reassured him. That's right. These documents from who knows where are surely lies. Our Brandon would never cheat. He's such a kind and outstanding son, his mother protested. You might be kind to your parents, but that kindness seems to end there. Like father, like son. Now Brandon's mother, take a look at these photos, Ellen said, pulling out a picture from the documents. I recently stayed at a hotel for a business meeting and saw Nicholas there. He was with another woman, looking very cozy, so I had the detective look into Nicholas too. The results were just as I expected. Do you understand now? Brandon's mother's face went pale as she grabbed the documents and examined them closely. What is this, Nicholas? How long have you been doing this? It's all lies, isn't it, Veronica? Stop looking. Give me that. Nicholas, looking panicked, tried to snatch the documents, but it was too late. Veronica, distraught, confronted Nicholas. You've been cheating on me. The car you wanted so badly was for her in these photos, wasn't it? No matter how hard Nicholas tried to calm her down, Veronica wouldn't listen. The discussion about Brandon's divorce was forgotten as Veronica stormed out of the house, crying, with Nicholas following after her. Left behind, Brandon said, "Hey, wait, what about me?" and followed them out in confusion. The rest of us were left in stunned silence for a while, but Aylin had a satisfied look on her face, winking at me. Later, Aylin told me that Brandon's parents did end up getting divorced. You won't fall for such a terrible man again. Let's make you more attractive. I'll teach you everything about grooming yourself as a woman. Despite her busy schedule, Ellen visited me often and took me to various places like meals and shopping trips. During that time, I learned a lot from her. A year after the divorce, I made the decision to go to graduate school. I worked hard to improve myself, focusing on my studies. Time passed quickly, and one day, I heard someone call my name at a street intersection. I turned around to see Brandon. It's been a while. You've changed a lot, haven't you? At first, I didn't even recognize him. In Brandon's eyes, the woman standing before him was no longer the plain ex-wife he knew, but had transformed into an incredibly beautiful and attractive woman. Meanwhile, Brandon had fallen on hard times due to the scandal of his parents' divorce. It seemed he was no longer attending graduate school. His parents, Nicholas and Veronica, had decided to stop providing him with financial support because of the trouble he caused. He was struggling to afford his tuition and living expenses, far from the carefree life he once enjoyed. The women who used to be interested in him had left him one by one. The former glory he once had vanished in an instant, and now he found himself face to face with his ex-wife, who seemed to be a completely different person. As Brandon was about to suggest catching up, a man approached and asked, "Sorry for the wait. Are you a friend of Margarita's?" It was Leonard, the man I was currently dating. Wow, that guy is really handsome, isn't he? He's so tall. Could he be a model? Commented a group of women nearby, looking at Leonard. He's someone from my past, but it's okay. We're finished talking. Let's go, shall we? Leonard said, taking my hand and briefly acknowledging Brandon. Brandon stood there, stunned, as Leonard led me away by the hand. Without a second thought for Brandon, Leonard and I walked towards the crosswalk, and I didn't look back, keeping my gaze